And today we're immersing ourselves in something truly foundational, frankly, quite radical.
Yeah, we're looking at the philosophy of anti-colonial struggle,
Yeah.
specifically the psychological and social changes Frantz Fanon documented.
Right, during the Algerian Revolution, which was just this crucible.
Absolutely. And for those of you who are studying anti-colonial or decolonial thought, you'll know this material is just essential. It's core stuff.
Our mission today is, well, pretty focused. We want to look past the usual things, the treaties, the battles, and dive deep into the internal revolution.
What happens inside people?
Exactly. What happens when an oppressed population actively decides, to seize its own liberation? Fanon's work on Algeria, it's this critical, sometimes brutally honest roadmap.
A roadmap for understanding how a colonized identity doesn't just bend or adapt.
No, it shatters, and then it rebuilds itself into something completely new.
That framing immediately signals a shift in focus, doesn't it?
Mm.
Which is vital for getting a handle on the material we're looking at.
You really,
The context, for instance. Adolfo Gilli's introduction to our sources frames that whole period, the 50s, the 60s, not as isolated incidents.
No, not at all. He calls it an age of revolution globally. The old way, the age of indifference, as he puts it, was basically over.
Finished. Capitalism itself was seen as being under siege globally.
Right. Gilly argues world capitalism was facing these huge challenges everywhere. So Algeria wasn't just some local flare-up.
It was part of a much bigger tide.
A vital part of a global, almost existential wave. And knowing that global context is crucial because it shapes Fanon's core interest, his preoccupation.
Okay, so what was that preoccupation, if it wasn't just documenting the brutality?
Well, the brutality and suffering were immense, obviously. Horrifying, let's be clear on that. But his goal wasn't just to document that.
So not military tactics either. Or political platform.
Deeper, much deeper. His real focus was on the spirit of the struggle itself.
The spirit.
Yeah, the opposition, the initiative people took, the daily heroism you saw in the masses. He was fundamentally obsessed with that moment.
Which moment?
The moment the colonized person stops just reacting to injustice and starts actively creating a new justice, he shifts the focus, you see, from the passive victim to the active revolutionary agent.
That distinction feels absolutely fundamental. It suggests the real revolutionary act isn't waiting for some government paper, some concession.
No, it's the oppressed seizing control themselves, deliberately. And Gilly points out, liberation is taken with their own hands.
And in that very act,
Yeah.
something changes.
Instantly, fundamentally. They are transformed. They gain this soaring confidence, an invincible belief in their own collective power.
And that's not just like feeling good about yourself, it's practical.
Oh, absolutely practical. That confidence is what equips them for the enormous tasks that come next. Governing, building a nation, surviving the backlash.
Which is inevitable.
Always. So the political revolution, in Fanon's view, absolutely depends on this inner revolution happening first within the population.
And the cost of this inner shift,
Yeah.
it wasn't just measured in lives lost, though obviously that happened constantly. The sources talk about a different kind of sacrifice.
A much more personal one in many ways. It was about deep social change, cultural change.
That's right. Gilly says the greatest sacrifice wasn't dying, but changing your daily life. Your routines, your ingrained prejudices, even ancient customs.
If they hindered the struggle, think about how hard that is for any society. To willingly set aside generations of tradition or habits of, say, deference.
If a custom makes it harder to hide a fighter or pass a message.
Then that custom has to go. It has to be sacrificed for the collective goal.
Okay, so this is the core idea we're exploring today. How an entire society shifts gears. From passive resignation, maybe even complicity in its own oppression.
To radical self-creation. And that involves voluntarily letting go of traditions that might block the path forward.
So if that inner revolution starts with individual sacrifice, how did it play out when the whole society got involved? You mentioned women, the elderly, children.
Yes, the sources really emphasized this wasn't just young guys with guns up in the hills. It demanded total, pervasive mass participation.
And that mass involvement.
Mm.
It must change the whole dynamic of violence rules.
Completely. Fanon observes, oppression is maintained by violence from the top down, the police, the army, the administrative fear.
Systematic violence.
Exactly. And the sources are blunt. That system can only be liquidated by, well, violence from the bottom up, Once the struggle hit a certain point, around 54,
Arms became essential.
indispensable, not just for liberation, but for sheer survival.
And this is where the creativity, the brilliance maybe, of the mass movement really shows.
How so?
Well, the revolution found strategic value in groups the colonial power basically ignored, saw as passive, irrelevant.
Yes. What used to be a disadvantage, being a child, being elderly, being a woman hidden by a veil, suddenly became an asset, an operational advantage.
The weakness flips into strength.
Precisely. Think about urban warfare, getting through checkpoints. The French military is looking for young men, potential fighters.
They're not suspicious of the old man walking slowly, or the woman who seems frail.
Or the seemingly timid woman behind her veil, or the kid running errands looking innocent.
Because they aren't seen as threats, they become the revolution's hidden infrastructure.
Operating right under the noses of the authorities, in plain sight.
Passing weapons, information.
Medicine, food, smuggling things into cities, preparing ambushes, acting as guides, as lookouts, all without raising suspicion.
Fanon documents this as total mobilization, doesn't he? Where cleverness, cunning, it's not just a tactic, it's a necessary weapon.
A legitimate weapon for a population facing this overwhelming military force. And the sources really detail the transformation of women in particular.
Yeah, Fanon talks about that double oppression, social and sexual.
Right. Oppressed by the colonizers, sure, but also by their own internal social structures. Limited roles, limited autonomy.
But when the revolution needed them,
those internal patriarchal structures started to crack. They shattered, actually, under the pressure and the necessity of the struggle.
and this clarifies how victory was achieved, doesn't it? It wasn't a purely military defeat of the French army.
No, the source material is very explicit here. It says, quote, "It was the whole population supported by the guerrilla army, which defeated and destroyed the imperialist enemy as a social force."
The whole population.
And the tragic statistic Fanon cites really drives this home. For every one Algerian soldier killed, 10 civilians died.
10 civilians. That underscores it. The entire society became the battleground, absorbed the violence.
It was a societal war through and through, not just soldiers fighting soldiers.
And that realization that the whole population was the battleground, it leads right into the fight over culture, specifically the veil.
Ah, the veil, yes.
Yeah.
Such a charged symbol and a key battleground for identity.
This is where the colonial power really showed its hand, didn't it? Trying to destroy Algerian identity itself, not just its political structures.
Absolutely. The French strategy against the veil was very deliberate, very targeted, frankly, sinister.
They saw it as representing the Algerian woman's status.
And by extension, the integrity of the whole family structure. Their formula was chillingly simple. Let's win over the women and the rest will follow.
If they could break the custom of the veil.
They believed they could destabilize the entire indigenous society from within.
And they built this whole narrative to justify it, painting Algerian women as humiliated, sequestered, cloistered.
Denouncing Algerian men as medieval, barbaric in their attitudes, the goal was psychological warfare.
To trap the Algerian man in a circle of guilt, make them feel their own culture was the problem.
Suggesting they were holding back their women, that their ways were incompatible with modernity. It's the classic colonizer posing as the liberator of the colonized woman, ironically.
But this offensive backfired in a way. It led to what Fanon calls counter-assimilation.
A powerful reaction. Instead of ditching their customs under pressure, the colonized resisted fiercely. The veil itself took on this heightened meaning, almost a militant symbol.
A taboo character, the sources say.
Yes, it became a mechanism of psychological resistance, a way of maintaining this latent conflict against French pressure.
The sources draw a fascinating parallel here, like a mirror image. Fanon says it is the white man who creates the Negro, but it is the Negro who creates negritude.
Meaning the colonizer creates the category, defines the oppressed.
But the oppressed group takes that definition, those symbols, and consciously reclaims them, weaponizes them.
Absolutely. The French attacked the veil as backward. So the Algerians responded with the cult of the veil, transforming an old custom into this fierce, modern political statement.
A symbol of national resistance, cultural integrity.
Badge of honor, really.
But then, the revolution, being adaptable, it demanded they abandon this sacred symbol sometimes for strategy.
Which is maybe one of the most powerful examples of that inner revolution we talked about, sacrificing custom for survival.
The ultimate pragmatic test.
Exactly. After 1955, women actively entered the war messengers, spies, operatives, and the old ways needed new tactics.
If they needed to move through European parts of the city.
Carrying messages, weapons, just observing, The traditional veil became a liability. It drew attention.
So they took it off.
Strategically shed it when crossing into the European city. Now they appeared unveiled, maybe Europeanized. They could move freely, act as liaisons, carry arms without suspicion. That was shedding tradition for the mission.
That's the first camouflage. Look assimilated. But then the reverse happened, right? When the war got tougher.
Even more striking, yes, a testament to their rapid adaptation.
When the French police started getting suspicious of the unveiled, assimilated-looking woman.
She became a suspect. So the veil was strategically readopted.
But not for tradition this time.
Not at all. It was used to conceal. Machine gun clips, grenades, bombs hidden underneath. Fanon describes how this readopted bulky veil made the body look squashed, shapeless, even ridiculous.
Letting her pass as a harmless, traditional Fatma, as the term was used.
The veil went from symbol of tradition to revolutionary equipment, an instrument of war, hiding the fighter's identity.
Incredible. Using the oppressor's expectation against them. And this cultural battle went right into the family unit too, didn't it? Huge shifts there.
Massive shifts. Generational, conjugal. The old power structures just had to break down for the new nation to emerge.
The father-son dynamic is a key example.
Oh, definitely. Pre-1954, it was all about absolute respect, unquestioning. Truth is the property of the elders, that kind of thing.
But the father, often feeling powerless under colonial rule, maybe resigned.
He found himself lagging behind his son's militant spirit. The sources describe this powerful role reversal. The son, the young militant, would essentially have to indoctrinate his own father.
Convince him?
And the father would eventually join the struggle, burying those old values of just accepting things, of passive deference.
This must have empowered the younger generation massively.
Absolutely. Think about the young girl. Traditionally, a minor, married off quickly in arranged matches.
Suddenly she finds a new role, a new personality.
The revolution, the responsibility needed for survival, it forced her to develop these unexpected virtues. Calmness, composure, firmness.
They became adults, citizens, through the struggle itself, bypassing the old restrictions.
And maybe the most profound shift was between husbands and wives. The couple became, as the source says, a basic cell of the Commonwealth.
The old ways, the age-old jealousy, control.
Melted away when facing this huge external danger. Women would openly call out their husbands for cowardice if they weren't active in the struggle, demanding participation.
And marriage itself changed.
In the Maquis, the hidden revolutionary base is yes. It shifted from a family contract to a voluntary union. Decided before a local officer, based on mutual respect, love, forged in that shared struggle.
It really shows the cultural transformation wasn't just a result of the war.
It was the war, in a crucial sense. It was the engine driving it. They couldn't win without first rebuilding their own society, their families, from the inside.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Our sources also talk about how Algerians reclaimed the colonizers' tools, specifically radio and Western medicine.
Right. Things initially seen as instruments of oppression, of assimilation, but the revolutionaries saw their strategic potential.
Take radio. Before 1954, Radio Alger. It was seen as the voice of the oppressor, wasn't it?
Completely. Algerians apparently joked it was just Frenchmen speaking to Frenchmen. Many families refused to even buy radios.
Why?
They saw it as a vulnerability, a foreign voice coming into the home, which was considered like the last bastion of the national spirit.
Understandable. It broadcast colonial propaganda, orders.
Subtle messages designed to undermine Algerian identity. It was the colonizers' language, the colonizers' message right there in your house.
But then the revolution found its own voice, the FLN, the Front for National Liberation.
And everything changed. Overnight, practically. Once tracts went out announcing the voice of free Algeria.
People wanted radios.
The entire stock of radios was bought up in less than 3 weeks. The radio was, you could say, exorcised, no longer an enemy object. It became an instrument of liberation, claimed by the people.
And listening wasn't passive. It became part of the fight itself, the Battle of the Wags.
Oh, absolutely. The French jamming was intense, constant, so listeners had to actively participate, figuring out the jamming patterns, twisting dials, searching for frequencies together, often in secret groups.
It required effort.
Yes. The sources describe the voice as choppy, broken, hard to hear. But paradoxically, that very difficulty, that phantom-like quality, it actually nourished the nation's faith.
How so?
Because it took collective effort to hear it. It made the listener an active participant, a co-conspirator defying the French jamming.
And even the language used on the radio changed meaning. French, the language of the oppressor.
which had been associated with insults, threats, orders. It was stripped of its accursed character when the voice of the combatants used it.
Oh.
It was a conscious revolutionary act. They adopted French, neutralized its colonial baggage, and made it serve their cause. It became just a tool, an instrument for national communication reaching everyone.
A similar story unfolds with medicine, doesn't it?
Right.
Western medicine was initially deeply distrusted.
Fanon documents this so vividly. The colonized saw the doctor through this haze of almost organic confusion.
They link the doctor to the whole colonial system.
Inevitably, to the administration, the military. And there were real reasons, stories, incidents of experiments on patients, refusal of care, just blatant racism. It fueled this belief in the colonizers' fundamentally evil character. Deep, deep mistrust. Generations of it.
There's that powerful anecdote in the source about the Bolivian miner. Not Algerian, but captures the feeling.
Yes, fearing a U.S. smallpox vaccine was filth, designed to make them idiots so they can exploit us better.
That's how deep the suspicion ran. The medicine itself felt like another tool of control.
But then, during the liberation fight, suddenly medical skills became vital. Weapons for survival needed to treat casualties from the
How did a
fire.
native doctor, the one who worked within the colonial system before?
Suddenly, he was reintegrated, fully accepted. He became our doctor. That trust transformed everything overnight.
How did it change things practically?
Well, medical instructions that were previously ignored or rejected, like, say, not giving water to someone with an abdominal wound, which a mother might defy out of tradition or instinct.
Now they were followed.
Strictly, even by mothers. Because the instructions came from the revolution. The source of authority had completely shifted.
Is the core transformation again?
Exactly. The people assimilated modern tech, modern science, at this extraordinary rate once liberation became the goal. They willingly adopted efficiency in science when these tools were claimed by their authority, not imposed by a hostile power.
Okay, broadening the view again, let's talk about loyalties. It wasn't simple, was it? Especially regarding the European minority in Algeria.
No, Fanon is quite nuanced here. He avoids painting all Europeans with the same brush, which is really important for understanding how the new nation saw itself.
He points out the FLN made distinctions.
Clear operational distinctions. They knew that hundreds and hundreds of Europeans actively supported the cause, risked their lives for it.
So the focus wasn't anti-white, it was anti-colonial, defined by loyalty to the future Algeria.
Precisely. And that inclusivity is key. Look at the Jewish community. The sources give this socioeconomic breakdown.
Showing only a small fraction was really tied to the colonial system.
Right. Through jobs or specific privileges. But the vast majority, maybe 3/4, were described as a highly Arabized mass. They saw themselves as authentic natives.
And the FLN asked them to formally affirm they belonged to the new nation.
Yes, showing the vision was national, inclusive, aiming to unite everyone who rejected colonialism, regardless of religion or race.
And even some French settlers helped.
Yes, European farmers were apparently important collaborators, using their land, their farms as safe houses, storage for weapons, food.
Hidden infirmaries.
Exactly. The French authorities knew and tried to hide it or just label these supporters as communists.
To discredit their motives, make it seem ideological, not nationalist.
Right. Rather than admit some settlers genuinely backed the Algerian cause.
But even while accepting help, the movement strongly rejected a certain kind of help, didn't it? Paternalism.
Fiercely. They famously turned away European friends, these pacifist protectors who offered pity, compassion for the victims of French atrocities.
Why turn away compassion? That seems counterintuitive.
It was about revolutionary self-respect, psychological independence. They didn't want pity. They demanded respect for their struggle, recognition of their agency.
We weren't victims in their own eyes.
Exactly. Their message was blunt. Don't pity us. If you care, better fight against it in your own country as we do in ours.
Fight the system that enables this.
Yes. Because their fighting power came from within, from faith in their own strength. Paternalistic pity undermined that. It subtly repositioned them as helpless, needing rescue, instead of agents of their own change.
And that insistence on agency, on their own strength, connects to the bigger picture, the global wave.
Absolutely. Algeria wasn't alone. The sources explicitly link it to a global battle. China, Cuba, Zanzibar, Vietnam.
What connected them?
Mass participation was the essential feature, this rising tide of colonized people defining their own destiny, everywhere.
It demonstrates the core of revolution, perhaps.
Which is the struggle for human dignity, above all else. The goal is getting rid of all forms of oppression. Immediate economic conditions matter, of course, but they become secondary to that fundamental quest for dignity, for self-determination.
The political power emerges from the psychological liberation first.
And that brings us really to the heart of Fanon's synthesis, his core thesis, that the struggle itself, the fight for national liberation, creates the conditions, both spiritual and material, for this complete transformation, this reconversion of man.
Making a return to the old colonial ways impossible.
Unthinkable. Impossible and shocking, as the source puts it. The nation isn't some abstract idea anymore waiting for politicians.
No, the Algerian nation is no longer in a future heaven.
It is at the very center of the new Algerian man, this new person, this new society, forged in that struggle. It's inherently open. It wants to let every kind of genius grow, free from the old colonial limits.
The image that really stays with me from this deep dive is that sheer will of the masses, their resilience.
Even facing the absolute worst bombings, massacres, destruction, they find ways to reorganize, to keep going if they have that shared objective. They just go on living.
They tenaciously recreate themselves, bury their dead, and go forward.
Fanon shows us that physical systems can break, armies defeated, cities ruined, but that collective will, that decision to define their own future, that can't be broken by conventional means, maybe not even by atomic ones.
Because the transformation has already happened inside millions of people. It's psychological, existential.
Right. Ultimate power isn't just about resources or weapons. It's in that collective resolve, that unity. The sources point to Cuba during the missile crisis, facing possible annihilation.
And their attitude was.
We'd rather have them kill us all than go back to the old life.
That collective decision, it makes threats almost irrelevant, doesn't it?
It renders external threats, systems of power, kind of ineffective, what Fanon suggests, because the rejection of the past is total, even in the face of death.
So for you listening especially, you're studying how massive systems of power are challenged today, be they political, corporate, whatever.
The final thought, maybe the provocative question, is this. What does it really mean to define your own destiny, to find that kind of unity, that strength when you're up against these huge systems?
And to remember that the revolution, in Fanon's deep sense, isn't just about changing governments. It changes people. It renews society, fundamentally, from the inside out.